The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, Dover Publications Abridged Edition. Chapter 7, The Chateau d'If. As he passed through the antechamber, the commissary of police made a sign to two gendarmes, who instantly placed themselves on either side of Dantès. A door communicating with the law courts was opened. They passed down one of those long, dark passages which make all of those who enter them give an involuntary shudder. In the same way as Villefort's chambers communicated with the law courts communicated with the prison, that sombre edifice overlooking the clock tower of the Écoles. They wound their way along the passage, and at last they came to a door. The commissary knocked on it thrice with an iron knocker, and it seemed to Dantès as if each blow had been aimed at his heart. The door was opened. The gendarmes gave their hesitating prisoner a push forward. Dantès crossed the formidable threshold, and the door closed behind him with a loud bang. He now breathed a different air, a thick and mephitic air. He was in a prison. His cell was clean enough, though it was barred and bolted, and its appearance did not fill him with any dread. Why should it? The words of the deputy, who seemed to show so much interest in him, rang in his ears like a sweet promise of hope. It was 4 o'clock when Dantès was taken to his cell, and as it was the 1st of March, the prisoner soon found himself in utter darkness. With loss of sight, his hearing became more acute. At the least sound, he rose quickly and advanced toward the door in the firm conviction that they had come to set him free. But the noise died away in another direction, and Dantès sank back into his stool. At last, about 10 o'clock, when Dantès was beginning to lose all hope, he heard steps approaching his door. A key was turned in the lock, the bolts creaked, the massive oak door swung open, and a dazzling light from 2 torches flooded the cell. By the light of these torches, Dantès saw the glittering swords and carbines of 4 gendarmes. "Have you come to fetch me?" Dantès asked. "Yes," was the answer of one of the men. "By order of the deputy?" "I should say so." "Very well," said Dantès. "I'm ready to follow you." In the belief that they came at the deputy's orders, Dantès, relieved of all apprehension, calmly stepped forward and placed himself in their midst. A police van was waiting at the door, the coachman was on the box, and a police officer was seated beside him. The door of the carriage was open, and Dantès was pushed in. He had neither the power nor the intention to resist, and he found himself in an instant seated between 2 gendarmes, the other 2 taking their places opposite, and the heavy van lumbered away. The prisoner glanced at the windows. They were grated. He had but changed his prison. Only this one moved and was conveying him he knew not whither. Through the grating, the bars of which were so close that there was barely a hand's breadth between them, Dantès recognized the Rue Caisserie and saw that they were passing along the Rue Saint-Laurent and the Rue Taramis toward the quay. Soon he saw the lights of the Consigne before him. The van stopped. The officer got down from the box and opened the locked door with his key, whereupon Dantès stepped out and was immediately surrounded by the 4 gendarmes, who led him along a path lined with soldiers to a boat which a custom-house officer held by a chain near the quay. The soldiers looked at Dantès with vacant curiosity. He was given a place in the stern of the boat and was again surrounded by the 4 gendarmes, whilst the officer stationed himself at the bows. The boat was shoved off, 4 oarsmen plied their oars vigorously, and soon Dantès found himself in what they call the Friol, that is, outside the harbor. His first feeling on finding himself once more in the open air was one of joy, for it did not mean freedom, but the whole proceeding was incomprehensible to him. "Whither are you taking me?" he asked. "You will know soon enough, but we are forbidden to give you any explanation." Dantès knew from experience that it was useless to question a subordinate who had been forbidden to answer any questions, and he remained silent. As he sat there, the most fantastic thoughts passed through his mind. It was not possible to undertake a long voyage in such a small boat, so perhaps they were going to take him a short distance from the coast and tell him he was free. They had not attempted to handcuff him, which he considered a good augury. Besides, had not the deputy, who had been so kind to him, told him that, provided he did not mention the fatal name of Noirtier, he had nothing to fear? Had not de Villefort destroyed the dangerous letter in his presence, the letter which was the only evidence they had against him? He waited in silence and deep in thought. With that faraway look in his eyes peculiar to sailors, he tried to pierce the depths of the night. Leaving Ratonneau Island with its lighthouse on their right, and keeping close to the coast, they arrived opposite the Catalan Creek. It was here that Mercedes lived, and now and then he imagined he saw the indistinct and vague form of a woman outlined on the dark shore. Why did a presentiment not warn her that the man she loved was but 100 yards away from her? If he gave a shout, she could hear him. A false shame restrained him, however. What would these men say if he called out like a madman? In spite of the repugnance he felt at putting fresh questions to the gendarme, he turned to the one nearest him and said, "Comrade, I adjure you on your honor as a soldier to have pity on me and answer. I am Captain Dantès, an honest and loyal Frenchman, though accused of treason. Whither are you taking me? Tell me, and on my honor as a sailor, I will submit to my fate." The gendarme scratched his ear and looked at his comrade. The latter made a motion with his head, which seemed to say, "I can't see any harm in telling him now." And the gendarme turned to Dantès and replied, "You are a native of Marseille and a sailor, and yet you ask us where we are heading for?" "Yes, for on my honor I do not know." "Have you no idea?" "None at all." "Impossible." "I swear it by all that I hold most sacred. Tell me, I entreat you. Unless you are blind or have never been outside the port of Marseille, you must know. Look round you." Dantès got up and quite naturally looked in the direction the boat was moving. Before him, at a distance of 100 fathoms, was the black, steep rock on which stood the frowning Château d'If. This strange pile, this prison, whose very name spelt terror, this fortress around which Marseille had woven its legends for the past 300 years, rising up so suddenly before Dantès, had the effect on him that the sight of a scaffold must have on a condemned man. "My God!" he cried. "The Château d'If? Why are we going there?" The gendarme smiled. "You cannot be taking me there to imprison me," Dantès went on. "The Château d'If is a state prison and is only used for important political offenders. I have committed no crime. Are there any judges or magistrates at the Château d'If?" "As far as I know, there are a governor, some gaolers, a garrison, and some good thick walls." "Are you trying to make out that I am to be imprisoned there? What about Monsieur Vifort's promise?" "I don't know anything about Monsieur Vifort's promise. All I know is that we are going to the Château d'If." Quick as lightning, Dantès sprang to his feet and tried to hurl himself into the sea, but 4 stout arms caught him before even his feet left the bottom boards of the boat. With a howl of rage, he fell back. The next moment, a sudden impact shook the boat from stem to stern, and Dantès realized that they had arrived. His guardians forced him to land and dragged him to the steps that led to the gate of the fortress, the police officer following him with fixed bayonet. Dantès made no useless resistance. His slow movements were caused by inertia rather than opposition. He was dazed and reeled like a drunken man. He saw more soldiers stationed along the slope. He felt the steps which forced him to raise his feet. He perceived that he passed under a door and that this door closed behind him. But all his actions were mechanical, and he saw as through a mist. He could distinguish nothing. He did not even see the ocean, that cause of heartbreaking despair to the prisoners, who look on that wide expanse of water with the awful conviction that they are powerless to cross it. There was a moment's halt, during which he tried to collect his thoughts. He looked around him. He was in a square courtyard enclosed by 4 high walls. The slow and measured tread of the sentinels was heard, and each time they passed before the light which shone from within the chateau, he saw the gleam of their musket barrels. They waited here about 10 minutes, evidently for orders. At last a voice called out, "Where is the prisoner?" "Here."